the sideline. It's Denzel Ward. He's to the 35, 40. He's to the 50. He's to the 40, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown. A pick six. Denzel Ward is back. On the right side to Chubb. Chubb over the 50. Chubb to the 45. Chubb to the 40. Down the sideline 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. There he goes. Touchdown. Nick Chubb.
Yes, just 3 Sundays to go now until the Cleveland Browns take on the Carolina Panthers in the week 1 of the NFL season. The season is getting ever closer, and the Believeland Brits are once again here to give you a bit of light relief, shall we say, in amongst the hectic off season. I'm once again joined by Shaun. Shaun, good to have you back, mate. How are you today?
All good, mate. Appreciate you covering me last week, mate, at short notice. But yeah, good to be back, mate. Looking forward to talking some Browns.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that you missed a potentially dodgy one last week, with it being very schedules and ban related. But it turns out that you couldn't get out of it completely, because we'll have a bit more on that in a bit. Jen, how are you?
I'm all good. All good here.
Yeah?
Yes.
Good to hear. Owain, and you? I hear that you've had a pretty busy day yourself, bud.
Yeah, just non-stop looking at screens all day. So I've decided to look at one for another hour with you lot. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good job you're contractually obliged, mate. That's all I'm going to say. Get the fully guaranteed money down first, and then you complain. That's the way to do it. Let's crack on then with some Cleveland Browns news to kick us off. And for the 4th episode in a row, chaps, let's talk some Deshaun Watson. But, and here's a bit of a klaxon moment. This will be the last time we probably talk about him in any sort of newsreel for about 2 months.
Oh, that is a kiss of death if I ever have heard.
According to the league, it's done. It is settled. It is finally put to bed. This is, I assume, the exact words that Roger Goodell said when he negotiated a settlement with Deshaun Watson's team in the NFLPA, 11 games and a $5 million fine. He will return week 13 against the Houston Texans. Here's just a reminder of the games he'll miss for those of you who haven't already had it rammed down your throats for the last week. Carolina away, Jets at home, Steelers at home, the Falcons away, Chargers at home, Patriots at home, Ravens away, Bengals home, bye week, Dolphins away, Bills away, Bucks home. So those are the games of which he'll miss. Now, Shaun, you weren't here last week for our predictions pod, but I'll sort of give you a little rundown as to what that entire hour basically showed us, of which is that all three of us have rather differing opinions on how good Jacoby Brissett is. We all have differing opinions on whether or not Jimmy Garoppolo would be any better. And we all have differing opinions as to whether or not Deshaun Watson will actually be a factor or not. So, as you can see, we came to very little consensus. But the general vibe is that with Jacoby Brissett, we'd end up with about somewhere in the region of 5 to 6 wins in that 11-game window. Would you say that's fair?
I'd say that's fair. The one thing I would say is that I think the defense is going to be the side of the ball that wins and loses us games. I think it's good enough to keep us competitive in games, with possibly the exception of the run defense. We'll probably talk about that when we talk about the pre-season showing yesterday, which showed up those glaring holes yet again. However, if I look at that schedule, I run down it. Where's the first decent running game against us? Week 6, the Patriots, they ran the ball down our throats last year. So the Patriots got a good run game. The Ravens have always got a good run game. Joe Mixon always runs well against us. There's a 3-game stretch there. But in general terms, if you look at it, none of the teams that we're up against are particularly run heavy, which probably plays into our strengths a little bit. But, ultimately, it doesn't matter how good the defense is. Obviously, there are going to have to be points put up on the board. Jacoby Brissett, whatever you think of him, he's not exactly inspired when he started wherever he's been in the league, has he? Let's be honest. He's had different stints now in different places, hasn't he? He's been at Indianapolis, he's been at Miami, he's obviously been in New England. Whenever he's had the opportunity, he's never consistently won games. So I wouldn't say I'm overly optimistic. I think your prediction of somewhere in the region of 5 to 7 probably feels around about right, but it probably has to be more that 7 than that 5 if the last 6 games are going to mean anything. I don't think you're going to get anywhere if you've lost 7 games out of the first 12, out of first 11. You're going to be out of it by then, aren't you? So it's a shame. It is what it is. But they've obviously made the bed and they've got to lie in it now in terms of the decisions that they've made. I don't think we should go for Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not going to touch on that too much. I know you covered it a bit last week. But I think if they were going to go that way, the option was there before they did any of the other stuff that they have done. And ultimately, does it really guarantee you anything other than maybe a few more wins this year? What do you do? Let's play hypothetical. Jimmy G is brought in, and let's say he wins 10 of these 11 games. Do you bench him? I can't see how you could bench a guy that wins 10 out of 11, and then if you get to the stage that actually he takes you to the playoffs, are you then sitting in a situation where you're guaranteed to pay somebody $45 million and you're having to let the guy that's just had a winning season walk out the door? So I don't see how that's a good scenario. And obviously you've got the rollover cap issue. So, for me, it is what it is now. You roll with what you've got. To be honest, I would rather see Joshua Dobbs playing based on what I saw in limited time yesterday. He's at least exciting. Jacoby Brissett doesn't really excite me. But, I think probably 5 to 7 wins based on the strength of the roster overall is probably fair.
Well, you say if you don't win any more than say 4, then we're in real trouble. I'm just looking back now at what we predicted last week, and Owain, it looks like here, seeing as it doesn't look like we are going for Jimmy Garoppolo in any case, from what I've read online from the reporters and all the rest of it, looks like Jacoby Brissett will start week 1 unless there is a severe change in the background. You had us down for 4 at a push by the looks of it. So on the back of that, is this season, do you hold out much hope for this season now after this ban has come in?
No, not really, because my basis on, I don't know where I got to in terms of my predictions last week. I would have thought it would have been in around 9 wins, was it?
Just going up to week 12, because that's all I've got in front of me, you had us at 4 wins.
Yeah, so I think, and that's probably basic. I probably gave Watson a win at the back end of that as well.
This is just Jacoby, mate.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. I don't see it personally, because if we win 4 games out of the first 11, I think it's going to take Watson a good 2-3 games to get into the swing of things properly as well. And I think Shaun nailed it. If we're going to, do anything this season, it's going to heavily depend on the defense. But for me, they've had a plan to, score a bunch of points, and then, that sort of negates teams from running on us. And I wonder if now, instead of talking about Jimmy G, I wonder if now the plan sort of deviates away from having, all these young defensive tackles. So for me, the likelihood is they keep Jacoby Brissett. But I think what's more likely now than it was before is maybe they bring in someone like Sheldon Richardson. Because I think they're going to have to be more stout against the run defense this year, simply because we're not going to score enough points to make the run so pointless, if you will. And that's what I think their plan was. So I think if any plan's going to change from, I think it might be that one.
Yeah, something which I did see quite a lot of yesterday was Tommy Togiai just being shoved backwards and backwards.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a running theme, I think, with our defensive tackles as well, which isn't the best. To continue on with this story, and then I'll ask you a question, Jen. So Watson obviously gave his apology to Aditi Kinkabwala the week before this decision came to light, probably in the hopes of having, being able to negotiate a better deal for himself. Of course, after this ban was then announced by the league, he then, in his press conference to reporters in Cleveland, said that he stood by his innocence. And the Haslams then, in a press conference, spoke of everyone deserving a second chance, and actually used Kareem Hunt as sort of the fence post, saying, look what he did with his second chance, this works. Now, just putting aside for the second the PR nightmare of presenting two very different fronts, where Deshaun Watson's protesting his innocence and the Haslams are going, well, he's guilty, but everyone deserves a second chance, which is exactly how it sounds at the very least. Whether or not the Haslams are basically saying that or not is by the by in terms of just their wording of it all. What is your general feeling on just on how that was all presented? Because I personally, I didn't know what to think after the press conferences that day.
I mean, I have a whole opinion on this. I did tweet about it, but I just feel like we should never have gone there. We should never have gone for him whatsoever, because it's just caused us so much trouble that's not worth it in the slightest.
But now, moving on, what are your thoughts now, obviously in this position and moving forward, and any feelings towards obviously either his comments or the Haslam's comments?
I'll cheer for the Browns, but I won't cheer for Watson. And there's a lot of people on Twitter that are like that. I just feel like the Haslams have just dug themselves a big hole and made people around the world that have been through that stuff, made them feel worse, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but
yeah.
I think the whole thing was a bit of a shambles, to be honest. Like, I think they've obviously put a written statement out there, which is what they wanted to come across as, and then Watson's clearly gone out there and said the complete, nearly the complete opposite to what the written statement is. And then Jimmy Haslam comes out, and from the snippets I've seen, I didn't watch it all, I'll be honest, because I think all of us were finding it difficult that day to look at anything Browns wise. But the snippets I've seen, he was getting frustrated with the media. He brought Kareem Hunt up, like you said, which I think is misguided, because one is not anywhere near the same thing, and two, for Kareem Hunt to have gone through this rehabilitation process and started to clear his name to bring him into something so serious, I thought was very, very misguided. And I just think that sort of press conference sums up the Haslam's ownership in a press conference for me, and it's not very well thought through, and just very misguided. So I think they could have handled the situation much better, even if they hadn't even gone in front of the cameras that day. I don't think there was any particular need for them to come out and speak in public. Just two written statements. I know the written statements they did a couple of weeks ago came off very, very badly, but for me there was nothing to be gained from coming out and speaking in front of the media the way they did. So whoever's advising them, I think maybe getting sacked sometime soon. But it just comes off as really misguided for me.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what I could basically ask better or worse, did off the back of it being given as an 11-game ban, we all knew that more games were going to be tacked on. I think the consensus was something in the region of 10 to 12 games, really, especially when negotiations started on it. So the ban's kind of by the by here. But in terms of how the Browns have addressed this entire situation, and you can say what you want in terms of whether or not they thought that they were going to be in this kind of mire. Do you feel better or worse about the Browns organisation today than what you did last week?
I don't think much has changed in terms of my feelings toward the organisation, from the jump when we first went for him. Like, I don't think they've handled the situation particularly well in the media, and I think, like I just said, but, they made the decision to bring him in, and that was that for me. Like, that's put a stain on how I feel about the organisation personally. But yeah, they're just going to have to learn their lessons really quickly when it comes to this, I think, because they're not going to get too many more chances to make such big blunders in the press without, real backlash. So, they have to be incredibly careful for me.
Yeah, I agree as well. As soon as they announced that they were looking at him, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I had to step away for a good few months and think generally, can I do it? But you're too far in. You can't go.
Yeah, I think that's what we all feel, isn't it, Shaun, to a certain extent? I know we've obviously spoken about this time of memoriam, really. I'm very much in the park of it's too late for me to sort of step away from Browns fandom because it's so entrenched and one person isn't going to stop me from doing it. But by the same token, it's definitely made me think that the atmosphere and the ethos and the culture of the club's completely different.
It's incredibly difficult. We've talked about this, haven't we, in terms of I appreciate everyone's position on this, and I agree with what Jen's just said, cheer for the Browns, not necessarily for the player, but I've said this before, he's not a star wide receiver that might get 10 targets a game. He's going to be involved in every single play. It's incredibly difficult to separate the two. I've been as optimistic and you can probably now say as naive as anybody since the day this happened. I gave the front office far too much credit for doing any sort of due diligence. I thought his initial press conference, again, you can now look back in hindsight and say, he came across as arrogant, unremorseful, etc., but believing the words at the time in as much as give everybody the benefit of the doubt, innocent until proven guilty, all of those kind of things. Last Thursday, when this all started unraveling, and more so when they started speaking, it just got worse and worse the more that got said. The more that got said and the way that it got said, it just got worse and worse. And it boiled down to a simple line in the press conference from Jimmy Haslam, which really just summed it up. They were talking about what had happened, and he simply said, let's not forget this guy's 26 and he's a superstar quarterback. Yeah. And that's it. That was all that anybody gave a shit about. And to be completely honest, I've really struggled these last few days. As you know, mate, we do the full 10 yards official podcast together in terms of the generic NFL stuff that we cover. I'm usually buzzing for the NFL season round about now. I'm usually watching every preseason game, listening to every podcast, reading every article, getting really psyched up for it. I've got to be honest, I really couldn't care less about the NFL season starting in 3 weeks' time. And that's a horrible, horrible thing to say. And I genuinely, as it stands today, I couldn't give a shit if we win or lose week one.
I'm just glad that I'm on holiday week one and I don't have to see or deal with it. I'm not here.
There's a huge part of me that wants Baker Mayfield to tear it up and go and grab his crotch or do something like Baker would do right in front of our bench. Because, none of this needed to happen. And like I say, I've been too naive to give too much credence and credit to the front office. I've said somebody should lose the job. I think it seems pretty obvious that this has now all been ownership driven. I'm really appalled in terms of Dee Haslam. I thought she had more about her than Jimmy. I thought Jimmy's always been a bit of a crook, if I'm honest, but I always thought Dee was at least somebody that could even him out, and you'd like to think, based on the subject matter, that she certainly would have evened it out in this scenario. But the whole thing has just left me feeling really, really, really uncomfortable. And like I say, the more the guy speaks and the more the team speak, he's gone from being innocent to never paying off for settlements to never accepting a ban to now settling 23 out of 24 or whatever the case may be. And the only reason the 24th won't settle, apparently, is that she said he's not showing any remorse and everything. And good luck to her. Absolutely good luck to her. But he's gone from not doing any of that, to, like you say, that press conference, which was all just words, to then changing his story. The guy just looks more and more guilty by the day. Looks more and more guilty by the day, and it becomes more and more difficult to get behind the trade. And like I say, this season now just feels like a complete waste. I do believe everybody does deserve a second chance. Let's hope that some good comes out of it in the long run in terms of education, etc., etc. That won't turn the clock back. That won't stop any of the pain and suffering for any of the victims in this particular case. But even the way that's been done, why are the league paying $1 million? Why are the Browns paying $1 million? This bloke's about to get 250 million. Just give it all to him. Fine him the whole 250 million. Why on earth do the league need to pay anything? What have the league done wrong? The whole thing makes me sick, to be completely honest.
Well, I wouldn't say that the league is completely innocent in all this, especially considering that the league is made up of the clubs. And, let's not forget the fact that the Texans aren't exactly innocent in all this either. And there's there's an argument to be made there. And the fact that they've settled with everyone that came up to them shows that there is something there to be said. And I think that the NFL's ineptitude at being able to give a much bigger penalty, you look at baseball at the moment. Major League Baseball would give 10-year bans if they could. They've already come out with year to 2 year to 5 year bans on a whole host of other things, of which the NFL previously has only done 3 games on. So it's virtue signal money, really, if we look at it with a shade of cynicism. But I do share very similar views there. I think it's been difficult to try and get too hyped up for this season. I think that you guys have actually helped me more than anything, just in terms of keep going on in terms of the Browns fandom at the moment, and it has been more of a challenge. I think it's been more of a challenge than even the Hugh Jackson years, But hey, we're not a completely pessimistic podcast, right? What we're going to say now, we're going to completely... Oh, are you sticking your hand up to speak there? Oh, I know.
I am. I just wanted to touch really quickly, and this is the last thing I'll say. Shaun summed up my whole feelings on the NFL season there as well, nailed on. But just the one thing that he mentioned at the end, and I agree that everyone deserves second chances, but what I wanted to ask you all was, if he's showing no signs of remorse and no signs of being guilty, like in what he's saying, do we believe that is a second chance if he thinks he's done nothing wrong?
Well, apparently he might not get back in. There's a whole rumor that apparently his reinstatement is predicated upon him going to counselling and dropping this completely innocent stance. That's something which I read today, and which if that is the case,
the only thing about that is the thing I find difficult about that is we heard last week when they were sort of mulling over how long this ban was going to be, and that it was going to be a year, and he was going to get 10 million. And that was predicated on the fact that he'd shown no remorse to Sue Robinson. Then he comes out after those rumours and says, "Oh, I'm sorry for every person that I've hurt." And then when he got away with it, and sort of it was only 11 games, it was only 5 million, then his tune changed again. So the only thing I'd be weary of there is that he just goes to counselling and says everything that everyone wants to hear so he can get out of it again. And then he starts playing and doesn't look back from it. That's any apology that he sort of says from now, I'm just, disregarding completely. I kind of did last week as well, but, I just don't think you can trust anything he says, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, we called it a faux apology last week. We sort of knew the deal, really. You even said it wasn't even a statement of actual remorse. It was more to do with just people around,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what he said. You had that nailed on, where it's he even used the word triggered.
Yeah.
I mean, my God. I don't want to be one of these podcasts that basically goes into psychology and all the rest of it, but you have to be a special kind of egotistical or deranged to decide that that's the best line of wording to go for. But I'll tell you how I'm trying to get past this. I think that there's fault on a number of parties' sides, and the only way that we're going to be, because there's nothing that we can do, for example, as fans. Seemingly, the league works in a manner where, unless the NFL are going to ban him forever, there's nothing that they can do either. Because, at the end of the day, everything moves forward in the league. The best we can hope for is, and this is probably the only way in which I see a comparison to anything like a Kareem Hunt story, whereby he goes through what he's been mandated to go through, and it actually works. That's all I can hope for at this point, is that something positive comes out of it. Like, there are no other victims. There's no other instance where this happens, that this can be a next chapter. Realistically, I think that's the best we can hope for at this point, and still keep a semblance of colour in our heart as we go forward with this, because at the end of the day, we've got 4 to 5 years of this.
Well, 4 to 5, you're looking realistically at 10 to 15, I would have thought.
Yeah, so you have to do something to protect yourself at night, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Unless there's anything else, I'm drawing a line under this until, and I think that anyone that's still listening to this podcast and doesn't believe it's just virtue signaling at this point, I'm drawing a line under it until November minimum. And even then, we're going to probably be talking about impact on actual results. So, line drawn. Let's move on to some actual football, shall we? Yesterday, the Eagles beat the Browns 21-20 in the preseason game. There were a few highlights, though. Cade York hit a 50-yarder and then doinked to 55. Emerson Jr. continued to look good. He made a couple of nice breakup plays, I thought. Josh Dobbs, Sean, you mentioned him earlier. Josh Dobbs had a really he gave a really nice account of himself, I thought, especially with that long run down the sideline, of which he actually performed the kind of, drop down the sideline, a little tiptoe motion of which most running backs can't get right. So that was really nice to see. LeCount the third recorded 7 tackles. I thought he was everywhere from what you could see yesterday. I think he's doing himself justice in terms of making sure that he gets himself a spot this year. Apart from that, a few other nice performances elsewhere. Is there anything of which you guys saw? Because I think that all 3 of you saw at least bits of it yesterday. Was there anything of which you were either excited or worried by?
I think that the run defense showed its colours straight away, as well as third down defense. We've got used to seeing, our third down defense getting torched in big moments, and it seemed like they couldn't do anything but convert third downs against us for the majority of the game. But looking at the positives, I do think it's really hard to tell, anything by these preseason games, because you don't know, whether it's second team, third team, fourth team even out there. But I think, David Bell looked okay in the slot. He got into some nice positions, was able to sit down in the zone for the majority of the time. He made a couple of good catches. I know he had one drop as well. Schwartz actually caught a couple of things for a change, which was nice to see. But the one thing that stood out to me, and I was talking to a couple of other guys about this, was when when that long Eagles touchdown was thrown in the second half, you looked at the route that guy ran, you heard that he was, Olympic hurdler, and you thought, that's what Schwartz should look like, right? That's what a deep threat needs to look like. You're a 100-meter sprinter. That's what you need to do. And you just don't. I don't see any threat of that from him at all. So I hope that over the first few weeks of the season that we can see something of that sort of nature from him, where we see a real field stretching play, that he gets deep, and we see a big play out of him, because that's what he's there for plays like that from that Eagles player.
Do you see many of those plays drawn up for him? I can't actually recall much last year of Schwartz being basically told to go for a go route. I think I may have seen it maybe twice.
Yeah, I think there's elements last year. Obviously, the playbook was so limited with the situation with Baker and his shoulder, so you'll probably have to give it a little bit of a pass there. But I think Schwartz's best game in a Browns jersey still probably was his debut, wasn't it? The one against the Chiefs. So he's got a lot to do. I feel like I should tee Jen up for me. The exciting thing, yes, it was Cade York, wasn't it? Let's be honest, that was the most exciting thing of the day. I'm actually slightly disappointed on 4th and 15 from our own 20 that they didn't let him try and kick the field goal at the end, to be completely honest.
Not that one. The one right before the half. That one really annoyed me. We were it was 4th and 8, I think, and they decided to try and convert it. It would have been about 59 yards out or something like that. Go for the kick. You've got terrible weather conditions. You're kicking towards the dog pounder, which is historically the worst goal mouth to kick into in NFL history. You've got a guy with a leg that seems to kick through shit weather. Perfect practice conditions. And I think that the actual play that we ran was something that was never going to work as well.
No, surely
no,
not.
surely not. Surely not. Not on 4th and 9, Josh. That's far too silly to. Yeah, no, not a chance. But yeah, no, Jen, what did you think of your man Cade York yesterday? Obviously, he had that doink yesterday, but I don't think any of us are truly concerned about that.
No, I did feel bad for him when he missed that kick, because you could just see in his face afterwards he was gutted. But as far as having him in the team, they've got themselves a kicker now, and he can win us games on points now. And I think that's what the fans knew as well yesterday when he missed it. They still clapped him.
Yeah,
they still cheered for him, because it's been that long since we've had a kicker.
But
ridiculous.
Some of the stuff which you sent through to the chat though afterwards though, of what was some of the Twitter comments of which came through?
There was some people saying that they should get rid of him. He's not good enough. They need to go and look for someone else. And I was just like, just need to go and watch his college highlights, because that'll just tell you everything you need to know.
Cade York, Jen certified.
Yeah, I think the thing is with kickers as well, it's like, even the best ones will miss, particularly from distance. The thing that was really encouraging, that 55-yarder hit probably 3/4 of the way up the uprights.
Oh, it was good. It was good from 60. It was easily good from 60.
At least, and that's what I say. That's the exciting thing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? This guy has got a serious leg on him. I remember Austin Seibert missing from 50 because he couldn't kick it 50 yards. This guy, he's going to be able to. Yeah, he's going to look. Give her the opportunity. We said last year, didn't we? What was it? Justin Tucker, was it 66 yards? Isn't that a new record? Give him the opportunity. He's got the leg to get there from 66. So
that helps if he's in a dome as well. Is he in a dome this year at all?
Oh, that's a question. Atlanta,
that is a question.
Atlanta, week 4. There you go. Away at the Falcons.
There we go. Right, book it. Atlanta week 4. Cade York's beating the kicking record, a 66.5-yard field goal, of which just clips the crossbar and goes in, just to give us all a heart attack. And that will obviously mean that we lose the game just 12-13. Only optimism on this podcast, folks. Only optimism on this podcast. We got within a point. In other news, there's only a couple of other bits of news, but I realise that our news segment has suddenly gone on for half an hour. That shows you just how much of the of the pre-season is mainly massive news content. Baker Mayfield has now been told that he is the starter for the Carolina Panthers for week 1 and beyond, of which has ended probably the stupidest QB matchup race going. It was always going to be Mayfield. I don't know about you guys, but Mayfield versus Darnold hasn't been a thing since the first time they faced off against each other. I think that Matt Corral ended up with an injury, of which has put him out potentially for the season. Yeah, so I think that probably put the nail in the coffin, but realistically it was Mayfield's to lose, of which he did not. And I'm just going to cause just a little bit more outrage before we come to my actual topic today. Nick Chubb was only ranked 33rd in the NFL top 100.
I think that's someone should go to jail for that.
Yeah,
it's been at least the top 10, at least.
I do wonder if these voting processes have actually been affected by the Watson stuff, because Denzel, we spoke last week about Denzel being way too low. I think he was in the 80s.
Apparently the vote happened before the postseason.
That makes even less sense to me then. There's nothing really that you can pin it on. But yeah, Denzel was way too low last week, and now Nick Chubb, 33rd. Yes, it's a strange one, to say the least.
Yeah, for the next 25 minutes, folks, let's talk about 32 different players who are better than Nick Chubb.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I would like to start off just by going through the Hall of Fame list and seeing who's not playing anymore and putting those in there, because that's how they've done that. But no, outrageous. But I tell you what, go around the horn. What number would you actually give him? Personally, I think he's probably about 19. That's what I would have expected him at personally.
It's very precise, mate. You've obviously done a lot of thought. You've done a lot of thought into this to go 19.
I've done 19 for a reason, though, which will come to light later on in the show.
Oh,
good podcasting.
What can I say?
Yeah, look,
natural, mate.
Top 20, I would say, definitely. I mean, look, we're obviously going to be biased. I think he's probably all four of us would probably have him as one of our favourite Browns players. Being objective, he did miss a few games last year. Only had 8 rushing touchdowns, so it's probably a down year statistically, as much as I still love him. Look, in terms of his value to us, it's undeniable, isn't it? So hopefully he'll be rightly recognised back in the top 20 next year. Yeah,
he's maybe top 30 in terms of fantasy. Do you reckon I've just accidentally gone, oh shit? No, it's not fantasy points. Actual value. I digress. Right, let's get into the meat of this, which will end up not being so much the meat of this now. We'll do a little bit of a truncated version, but we digress. As promised last week, we are doing a run through of the other teams in the AFC North, just to know your enemy and just get our general thoughts really on the other teams around. 3 good teams, no matter how bad the Steelers look on paper. They are definitely not so in real life because Mike Tomlin. So what I'll do, folks, I'll assign you a team. Just sort of take me on a word journey around the team in terms of who they are, what they've done recently, and how you think that they're going to be going forward. Let's go by how they finished in the division last year, shall we? Jen, let's give you some airtime. Talk us through the Cincinnati Bengals and try not to have too much of an LSU loving.
All
try.
Right, sorry. I'll try not to. just wait until the college season starts again, and I'm a whole new person.
That's all right. We'll give you your own. We'll give you your own podcast on the 14 Yards Network for that one.
Well, I have not paid too much attention to the Bengals in the preseason. Not gonna lie, but looking them up before, they are currently losing 2-0. Now, that doesn't seem too good. I know it's only preseason. We don't pay attention to preseason.
We're talking about practice, Jen. We're talking about practice.
What?
Doesn't matter about practice. Just, yeah, it's more of a case of, obviously, we're talking about the Super Bowl participants here, so you've got to assume that there's still, they have a quarterback that's playing on despite an appendicitis scare that included a ruptured appendix.
Yeah, I think Joe Burrow's going to come out with a chip on his shoulder and want to prove a point. Wanting to come out and get to the Super Bowl again. Yeah. And I think he has the team to get him there, but whether he'll get there is a different story.
Yeah. So how did you feel about the Bengals last year? I have very strong opinions about the Bengals Super Bowl run last year, and anyone that does know will know that I thought they were the luckiest team ever in any NFL season, just because of the way in which it all landed. Did you think that they had a squad and had the performances that were worthy of a Super Bowl bound team? And do you think that they could, that on the basis of that they can get back there?
I definitely think they have a team to get them there, but I do agree that they did get very lucky in getting to where they were in the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow is probably one of the best quarterbacks, I think. And as for the backups, I just don't think the Bengals have the best backups. If he was to go out injured, they'd be straight. They wouldn't even make it out the playoffs.
Right. Okay. Now I see where you're coming. So basically, it's all about the first team. If they end up with injury scares, because they were one of the least injured teams in the year, one of the least injured teams of the year last year. So essentially, they need to keep themselves healthy again and ride on that once again.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a depth. Let's open it up to the group, chaps. Am I and Jen being too hard here, or is that about right? Oh, yeah. Seeing a massive head nod from Owain there. I feel like I'm about to get a pasting.
No, I just think the NFL is all about offense, isn't it? And you look at the Bengals, and they're up there with the best. Skill positions. Mixon, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, and then you've got Joe Burrow throw into them. So. Yeah, I think, when they got to the playoffs last year, I didn't know if they were going to creep in the end, but as soon as they got to the playoffs last year, I thought they were going to be a massive threat to anyone, just purely based off that. I think defensively, they weren't great as a unit last year. I don't think, you could pick out too many star players on that defense, apart from Jesse Bates, which obviously they're having massive, massive problems with. At the moment, I think he's a holdout his knee at the minute because they haven't signed him to an extension. So they're going to have an issue with Jesse Bates. But yeah, I see them as a massive, massive threat going forward just due to those skill positions, due to how young they are on offense. And, they seem to have sorted out their offensive line this year. So yeah, I think they probably go strength to strength this year.
All right, Shaun, do you share that? I mean, personally, I look at it and I think, they were 10-7 last year, which, really, I could see a Jacoby Brissett Browns getting close to that this year, even despite those weapons. And yeah, I don't know if they've necessarily improved, but, what are your takes?
I think they've improved in terms of where you would say their biggest weakness was. I think it was the offensive line. Obviously, there's everyone knows Joe Burrow spent far too much time on the floor. They've certainly addressed that. I think Lyle Collins is a really good addition. Obviously, he'll play right tackle. The two others that they've added to the line in terms of Kappa and Karras probably aren't two sort of, at the top tier free agents, but they're both solid veteran pros. And to be honest, solid veteran pros are probably an upgrade over what they had this time last year. So I certainly think they've made moves to address that. I think the skill positions, I think Owain's just said it there, they're probably one of the premier groups, let's be honest, in terms of the pure depth of those three wide receivers. I hate to say you could make an argument any three of those could sign for the Browns and be challenging for our number one wide receiver.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That they are that good. I think defensively, was where they excelled last year. I thought Trey Hendrickson turned out to be a fantastic addition in free agency. I think it was a big risk based off one good season with the Saints, but he certainly proved his worth. He was excellent, made a nice 1-2 tandem with Sam Hubbard. I think, I'd have loved the Browns to have been able to have got BJ Hill in free agency. He's the exact kind of, run stuffer that we needed, and potentially with them having DJ Reader on the books, you felt there was a chance. But that Bengals front is what the Browns want, isn't it? Those two in the middle, Reader and Hill, they're not going to fill the stat sheet in terms of sacks and quarterback pressures, but what they are going to do is like you say, stuff that run game. Look, they can be gotten at. I don't think it's a sort of surefire thing that they win this division again at all. I think for me, we'll come on to the team that I'm going to preview in a bit. I think if anybody finishes ahead of the team I'm going to preview, they'll probably win the division. We'll wait and see. But look, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Let's be honest, they're not the basement fodder that they have been for the last few years, and they're not going to be whilst they've got that level of quarterback play that they've got with Joe Burrow. So the Bengals are going to be around for a long, long time.
Yeah, that is fair. But when I make my points, by the way, I'm definitely not saying that they're basement fodder or anything like that. I'm just sick of hearing that it's an almost automatic repeat, because a lot went for them last year, and even to get to 10 wins, they had a lot in game that did as well. I think if they got back to 10 wins, that would actually be pretty successful with the schedule that they've got. But let's save the predictions for the end. You've teased us already, Sean. Actually, no, sorry, I'm not even going to you next. I just realised the Ravens actually finished bottom of the division. Owain, I'm actually coming to you next, buddy. You were tasked with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Naturally, new era in Pittsburgh. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, well, I think, everyone's got the Steelers down as, sort of nailed on basement of this division next year. And I think the more I think about it, the more I don't really believe that, actually. I think people forget just how bad Big Ben was last couple of years. Like, he couldn't throw past 10 yards at any sort of consistency. I think there was one game last season where Najee Harris, got, over 25, 30 touches of the ball or something stupid, where he was literally just running the ball or check down to the running back literally every game. So I think obviously their quarterback position is a massive, massive question mark. But, realistically looking at it, they did get to the playoffs last year with, we talk a lot about Baker Mayfield and how bad that season was from him last season. I think Big Ben's was probably worse, and they made it to the playoffs. So you look at it, and is Mitch going to be as bad as Big Ben was last year? He could be, but he could be better as well, I think. So,
do you reckon Mitch gets the job?
Yeah, I do. I do think he starts the season for sure. And then it's up to him how well he plays at the start of the season. Obviously, if he starts badly, we're Cleveland Browns fans. If your veteran starts badly and you've got a rookie there waiting, then the fan base tends to, scream the place down for the rookie to come in, doesn't they? So I think he'll start the season, and then whether he plays well enough to keep it for any distance of time is the question mark.
Oh, okay. Let's play a game, and I do like playing this game when we preview the divisions on Full 10 Yards, Sean. Where if you've got a controversy, even at QB or head coach, it's when are they likely to make the change. So I'm going to go through their opening schedule. You tell me where they are likely to end up having to make some where the tipping point might be. At Cincinnati, home to New England. At Cleveland, home to the Jets. At Buffalo. At Tampa Bay. No, still nothing. At Miami. You sure? At Philadelphia. Is no one biting? I bit ages ago. I bit like 3 games ago.
I don't know how many of those games they actually expect to win, though. That's my question mark. That's a strong start to the season there. The Browns may be one of the weaker teams there, considering, who we've got playing quarterback. But I don't know how many of those games they actually expect to win. Jets and Patriots would probably look at as the two that you sort of think that you're going to win.
Well, if I'm
but I don't
thinking
know
like the Steelers, then New England, Cleveland, New York,
Yeah,
Miami.
I think you've got to the Eagles game. The reason I hadn't bit at that point is that then is the bye week. That is normally the natural position and time that any sort of change like that would come. So that's where I was going to jump at that point there, because they then come back with Saints, Bengals, Colts as the next 3 games. I think Owain's just summed it up well there. They're probably going to start as underdogs in the opener in terms of the game with Cincinnati. Patriots game always going to be a difficult game. Browns game, divisional game. Like it's not the easiest of schedules on paper, is it? Let's be honest. But I would fully expect that. Look, the Steelers are coached by, in my opinion, one of the top 3 coaches in the NFL. That's the reason they are as successful as they are, as consistent as they are. The guy's never had a losing record. So anybody counting the Steelers out, do so at your peril, because they've proven year after year, despite what the circumstances are and what it looks like on paper, when the chips eventually fall, they'll be there or thereabouts again come the end of the season. They always are. They're just too good to not be. So I'd imagine that Mitch does start, but like you say, I'd imagine if it's going to be a change, it'll probably be 8 games in.
And you look at the way this team's set up. It's no coincidence that Mike Tomlin's a defensive-orientated coach. They've lost Joe Hayden only really on that defense. This season they've still got obviously TJ Watt. They've signed Minka to an extension, so their whole thing is being good on defense, and I think they'll carry on being good on defense this year. And like I said at the start of this little Steelers preview, I just don't think you can get much worse than what Big Ben was last season and the season before. So I actually think they'll be fine this season.
Mitch Trubisky. It doesn't exactly inspire me with confidence, but we digress. Shaun, take us through the Baltimore Ravens, mate.
Yeah, so for me, this is the team that I would say opens up as favourites for the division, in my opinion. I think if you look, you mentioned the Bengals and how unfortunate they were with injuries how fortunate they were with injuries last year. You can say the exact opposite with the Ravens. They just seemingly suffered injuries at all key positions right throughout the season. They've missed time from Lamar Jackson. They didn't have a running back room before the season started. They lost the left tackle. It just one thing after another. And they still managed to be extremely competitive. Probably helped them at the back end of the season to lose the games that they did. I know we always have this argument in season that you want to win as many as you can, but finishing 4th gives them a massive advantage in terms of the schedule as well.
Yeah.
In terms of who they have got to face. And you just look at the roster and it is stacked. Lamar Jackson, whatever you think of him, has done nothing but win when he's played in the league. The running back room is coming healthy. J.K. Dobbins was primed for a big season last year. Obviously never happened, but I think it will happen this year. And Gus Edwards is equally as adept as a backup. The offensive line has been strengthened. I think Morgan Mosey's coming in at right tackle again. Good veteran presence. We'll hold that side down. Ronnie Stanley looks like he's working his way back. Will probably again be good to go. And then you look at the draft as well. They picked up, for me, 2 really, really good players in the first round. I know a lot of the guys from the college side of the full 10 yards crew were saying that he won't get picked as one of the top players because of the position that he plays, but in terms of his actual talent and what he brings, they all said look out for Kyle Hamilton. He'd be a really, really good pro. The Ravens managed to pick him up. They then go and get Tyler Linderbaum in terms of a centre. Again, not a sexy pick, but it's one that's going to solidify that offensive line. And if you just look at that secondary in terms of what they've been able to put together there now, in terms of Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Fuller, Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark, Kyle Hamilton, it's a scary, scary prospect, the strength and depth that they've got in that secondary. The only question mark for me is pass catchers. Outside of Mark Andrews, the wide receivers are obviously questionable. I think they're expecting big things out of Rashad Bateman. We'll wait and see if that transpires. They obviously traded away Hollywood Brown and haven't necessarily done anything to replace him, certainly at this stage. So that would be where you would be suggesting the issues lie. But with that said, the way that the scheme is designed and set up, you know what it's like. It's 150 targets to Mark Andrews and probably shared 150 targets between the rest of the wide receivers, and that's probably about it. So for me, they start probably as favourites. Again, extremely well coached. It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? Every year we seemingly line up with a different head coach, and you still get John Harbaugh, you still get Mike Tomlin when it comes to these two. But yeah, for me, the Ravens are the team I would suggest to beat in the division.
Yeah, I mean, any arguments on that? I know that they're definitely my favourite for the division this year. Pretty much as soon as they went down to fourth in the division, I really kind of wanted us to chuck that game against the Bengals personally, because it's a little easier on the schedule afterwards. But yeah, anybody else see the Ravens as not being the front runner?
For me, they're the biggest boom or bust team in the NFL possibly this season, and I say that because of the questions surrounding Lamar Jackson. I think, if they don't get that extension signed early doors, and, by the looks of it, that's going to have to be done within the next couple of weeks. If he starts badly, I do wonder what that does to the organization as a whole. And Sean's mentioned the pass catchers being questionable at best. I do like Bateman, but past Bateman is really, really thin. Really thin. You've got, I think, Tylan Wallace is second-year wide receiver there. They've got the lad out of Texas, who's a third year, but mainly a returner. So yeah, wide receiver, they're incredibly thin, and yeah, you wonder if that last season was the NFL working out Lamar Jackson or not, because you saw the Dolphins blitz the living daylights out of him that game, and then after that game, everyone seemed to do it, and everyone seemed to get a lot of success out of it. So for me, Sean nailed it. That defense is frightening, really, really good. So for me, that's where the boom is. If Lamar Jackson holds it together and plays well, they could be very, very good. But the bust is quite considerable for me as well, because I think if he starts badly, there's a lot of questions that come up. A lot of Browns-like turmoil starts to enter the organization, and then from there, you look going forward. There's a lot of people saying Lamar Jackson goes to the Dolphins next year, and I think that's that crazy either. So it's
I've just teared up at the thought of that.
I think it's a very, very interesting year for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think I have actually just teared up at that. It's mad, isn't it? So apparently the hold up, according to some rumors, is that Lamar Jackson wants a fully guaranteed contract.
And you wouldn't blame him either, considering what we've gone about and done this offseason. You don't blame him for asking for that, really, either.
By the same token, the Browns are suddenly playing 4D chess.
Yeah.
all of a sudden, all of this, what if it was all just a ruse just to get Lamar Jackson out of Baltimore?
And you look at it going forward as well. Can you see the Bengals stumping up a fully guaranteed contract for Joe Burrow as well? Because I can't.
Looks like a pretty impactful injury a year currently. One being a leg injury, and the other one being, admittedly appendicitis, but still doesn't look good on the old insurance forms when you're filling out that $350 million 4-year extension, fully guaranteed.
They're known for lowballing their players. They've obviously already done it with Jesse Bates this offseason, so I can't see them stumping up a fully guaranteed contract either. So you look at it from that perspective, and if the Browns manage to run those two out of the AFC North, then regardless of what Watson does or doesn't do, that could be a win just given in the contract in itself.
Yeah, turns out it has nothing to do with Watson at all. We'll just play with Jacoby Brissett for the next 5 years. It turns out that all we had to do was just stump up guaranteed money to get everyone else gone. The Bengals, obviously, their main issue is they're a family-run organization. They don't have the same kind of money as other franchises to guarantee the pensions. So you have to be able to lock away the money in a pension whilst these contracts are ongoing. You have to put that money lock and key away, and the Bengals just don't have that kind of capital on hand. It's why they've had to finally add sponsorship to their stadium. It's why they're looking at redoing doing their stadium up a bit to include more corporate areas. They're trying now to put in more investment because they're going to have to pay these players eventually. Like you said earlier on, Owain, they have too many superstars in the offensive positions. It does make you wonder as to whether or not their window is smaller than what you'd expect with most other organizations, because they really won't be able to even pay any of them, let alone all of them. They might only be able to keep one or two compared to maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very real possibility.
Right, so that's AFC North's next year preview settled. Then what's the deal with Lamar Jackson, and will the Bengals be able to pay their superstars? That's sorted. Oh, and have Pittsburgh moved off Mitch Trubisky yet? So that's that sorted. In terms of this year, I want your 1, 2, 3, 4 for each of you for how the AFC North ends up. Shaun, let's start with you. You seem the most sure of yourself, just on the screens. Just on the screens, mate. Owain's currently in his darkness chamber, of which he seems to have at least once a night. Jen looked at me as if I'd just said Beetlejuice's name 3 times, so it's up to you, mate.
Yeah, I'll go Ravens to win the division. As I say, I think they're the team to beat. I'll go with the Bengals to finish second, the Browns to finish third, and I think the Steelers finish fourth.
Fair enough, Owain. That intake of breath, that glorious little intake of breath, as if to say, "Please no."
Yeah, I'll go Bengals to win the division. I'll go Ravens to come second. And this is where it gets real tricky for me. I think I'll go Steelers to finish third. Sorry, Browns fans, I don't want to do it, but I think we finish last.
Only optimism on this podcast. We were only going to go 1-16. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was speaking in 2017. Jen, how about you? I'm assuming a little bit more optimistic than Owain's 6-11 prediction, which I think it currently is.
I'd go Ravens, Bengals, us, and then the Steelers.
Yeah, so see, now I'm doing the intake of breath now, and I'm the one asking the question. So I do think that the Ravens are the runaway favourite. Their schedule is far too easy. They don't have the injury worries anymore. They had a great team beforehand anyway. I think Lamar Jackson plays the season. He's not as good as his MVP year by a long shot. He has only regressed. And that might not so much be that he himself has regressed. I actually think he's gotten a bit better as a passer. I just think that, like Owain says, people have started to work him out a bit more. You apply the pressure around the edges so that he can't move laterally. And if you look at the road game that we played against Baltimore, the sacks came just because we just decided to give everything and force Jackson to throw. If he can make those throws and the wide receivers can make those catches, then happy days for them. But more often than not, you're giving your defense, you're giving your secondary a chance, and you're giving your team a chance from that. In any case, they have by far the easiest schedule. I think they win. I think I've got them down as 11.5 personally. They're going to be around that sort of area. I think that the Browns and the Bengals are going to be fighting it out for second. Even with Jacoby Brissett, I have us down at around 10 wins personally. Something around that marker, and I actually think that the Bengals are around the 10 marker as well. It's going to come down to the head-to-head record against the Bengals, and I believe in having bogey teams. I think that Cincinnati genuinely hate playing us. I think that Joe Burrow closes his eyes at night and sees Denzel Ward in his dreams. It's just one of those where, for rhyme or reason, the Browns seem to do well. They, realistically, we should not have done the double over them last year. There was, I mean, obviously the second game was a bit of a dead rubber, but the first game we absolutely had no right to win that one. really, when you look at it on paper, and smashed out the park. So I think that that's going to be a lot closer than people think. And then the Steelers aren't going to be as bad as some people have put them out as. I'm going to say maybe 7.5. I think that's their over/under. So there is some credence to that. They'll get wins where they shouldn't because they're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's going to be those games of which really annoy us as a fan base. I look at, for example, the game against the Lions, which they had last year, of which flags essentially saved the Pittsburgh Steelers in that game, as an example. And there's going to be a few other examples there around, but realistically, it's going to be around that sort of level. Right. Let's finish with some barking mad, guys. We didn't have we didn't have it last week. We might as well have a little bit of it this time around. We'll do it as a bit of a quick fire though, just because there's not really one main thing of which has sort of like come about recently. Just a few little bits. First of all, I don't know if you guys saw this last week, but the thing which was really circulating Brown's Twitter last week was the season ticket holders got their gifts as season ticket holders. And it was, I don't know if you saw it, was an incredibly cheap looking painter's cap, which was an ode to like the 80s, I think it was, and a license plate holder. And there was a lot of uproar because of like how the Raiders have their little presentation boxes and stuff like that. Now in Britain, I don't know if you guys have actually had anything completely different to it, but I don't know of season ticket gifts much like outside a little wallet holder or something like that. But what do you think would be the worst thing to expect your club to give you? Can't say nothing, but what would be the worst thing which you think would be plausible for a club to give you? And just if you've actually received any kind of gift.
It's been years since I've had a season ticket anywhere, and this whole prospect of getting gifts for buying a season ticket, I just find the whole thing quite bizarre to be.
Because you're buying a place at the stadium, right?
Yeah, I do. I do find it completely bizarre. However, with that being said, I'm sure the three of you probably are as well. Official member of the British Bulldogs Backers Club, and to be fair, they do send out some pretty cool merch. So I have a couple of the bottle, I don't know what you call them, but the things you keep your bottles cooling in terms of your beer bottles and everything. They're quite cool.
Oh, the little like cozy type things.
Yeah, beer cozy. Yeah, they're quite cool. So there's some nice little bits and bobs. But yeah, if you buy the season ticket, you surely just paying for the seat. You surely don't want the freebies that come with it. Surely to go.
Yeah, see, for me, if I think of like a worst thing they can give you, what the Villa did previously was give them like a sticker to put on your seat to say, this is my seat for the year. Like, and that was pretty much all that was in it. It was an envelope with that and the card in it. I think of a weird little cap and I'm just like, it's probably a waste of fabric, but still. Anybody else want to throw their hat in for what would be either? Because personally, I think that they've done all right there. A little license plate holder and that. Is there something in which you'd be like, you could be worse?
Worst thing your organisation could give you, Deshaun Watson and all the drama that comes with it.
There we go. Someone said it.
On a personal level, I've been lucky enough never to have needed a season ticket. So I've never experienced, any gifts to come with it. But I did look at those gifts and laugh a bit, as if anyone on this planet are going to wear those caps.
I really want one person to, and it gets caught by CBS.
No chance. There's no chance.
Or like they have a day. Bring out your painter's caps. It's a painter's game.
I think the only danger of anyone wearing them if they've lost a bet at some point in the off season. But other than that, they're going to be filling up some landfill site somewhere, I think.
See, keeping the economy going, mate. That's what it's about. Look, you got to pay someone in Cleveland to make the caps. Then it goes through Cleveland recycling. And then you've got the upcyclers who then take apart the fabric and make it into something new that then gets sold for more tat. See, it's the way it works. Cleveland still needs a lot more industry, mate. This is how you do it.
Vicious cycle, that sounds like.
Yeah, capitalism. Believeland Brits podcast, slightly communist from time to time. Anyway, another thing of which sort of got Brown's Twitter up in a furore. And remember that I said the number 19 earlier? The number 19 seems to be very precious among some Cleveland Browns fans because Josh Rosen wearing the number 19 has pissed off a lot of people. And they're saying that the number 19 should be retired because of Bernie Kosar. Now, first of all, people seem to forget that Corey Coleman wore 19. And I would be just
But
as
he
pissed.
was a Browns legend as well, so just smirching.
Don't count out Josh Rosen. He's going to be a legend.
And that is all we can see of Jen this week.
Just saying.
No, I can't have that. I
No, you
can't have
won't.
that. That's a yellow card, Jen. If ever there was one, that's a
Send
clear
me
yellow.
off.
Yeah,
I do find this retirement of shirts thing quite weird. Obviously, it's it's for us over here and soccer. I'll put that in brackets.
we're a British podcast, mate. It's fine.
Yeah. So our football, you don't really see that a lot, do you, over here? So it's a kind of a
No.
weird concept that they retire so many shirts in the NFL. But yeah, I suppose if that's part of the culture, I think it is probably a bit of a weird one that they would decide to give that number to a camp arm.
But do you feel like Bernie Kosar, even if you go ahead with the idea of retiring numbers, is Bernie Kosar worthy?
I think if you look at the list of Browns quarterbacks that have beaten, then probably, yeah. I think, look at what he's been, what he's up against, and as a Browns quarterback, probably is a legend, yeah.
Oh God, is that the benchmark though? Be above average?
I know. I think if you're judging him off other Browns quarterbacks, we should probably be praying to him in a corner of our house, to be honest. So, yeah, maybe.
The one thing of which it almost smacks me of, though, if that's sort of our barrier, is again a European football example and one that's very close to home. Birmingham City retired the shirt of Jude Bellingham when he went off to Dortmund, despite doing very little for them, not even dragging them into the Premier League off his own back or anything like that, and just leaving at the first opportunity. And we'll just retire your shirt until you come back, if you ever come back. It's it does smack me just a little bit of that. But yeah, speaking of shirts, and this is the last section of Barking Mad, did we all see the rather disgusting shirts that were being sold outside First Energy Stadium yesterday?
That was lovely.
Yeah. The Bitch Give Me a Massage t-shirts. Not great. Don't recommend anyone purchasing them.
Well, mine's already in the post. What you on about? I'm joking,
but to be worn ironically, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what goes through your head if you're that guy. Like, what's he gonna gain out of that realistically? I don't know.
It's
because
like when
someone's gonna take a picture of him and post it everywhere on the internet for a start. Number two, he's just wasted a load of money on shirts that nobody's gonna buy. I just don't understand what he was thinking going there with them and trying to sell them. I can't understand what was going through his head.
Well, let's see as to just how bad we can make it, just for the last couple of minutes, right? What would be an even worse slogan to put? Like what? Like that to me was truly like terrible. But if you were to do a tongue-in-cheek one, almost to like, voice your displeasure at all this.
Oh God.
Or just at the Browns organisation in general.
Dangerous question to ask while we're recording that.
I thought we were drawing a line under all of this.
I know. We're still talking about it.
This is more in jest though. This is merchandising. I can get around it.
Yeah. Merchandising, Cleveland Browns. There's always next year, because let's be honest, that seems to have been the case for the 14 that I've supported them. That it's always next year. It's always next year. And to be honest, 2 years ago, you'd have thought, yeah, next year's the one. And then we had terrible injuries, etc., etc. You think, right, retool in the off-season, come back. And like I say, I know we want to finish with some optimism. but it's just a real shame that the optimism has been dragged out of all of us, isn't it, really? Let's hope that week 1 rolls around and they actually put some good performances on the field and we can actually get back to enjoying it again.
If anyone wants to message Owain personally, his Twitter handle is on this video at Owain Jones 39. If you want to
Send
see
him loads of DMs. He loves them.
if you want to hear his suggestion, because it's gold, but there is no way that it's good for public consumption.
Jesus Christ.
My one personally would be something along the lines of, I knew I said I wanted the Browns to win a Super Bowl by any means necessary, but this is ridiculous. Something along those lines. But no, I think that after reading that one, I'm going to I'm going to stop things there, I think, for 1 week.
You stand on your innocence, my friend.
It's always Cleveland versus the world. That's the best one.
No, I tell you what, that is probably the perfect line. That is probably the perfect line of which just about gets on that dotted line between the grey area and not. Yeah, I'm going to have to cancel that order of that shirt now. It's a shame. That's actually a very nice shirt that they used to have on that one. It just means something completely different now. Well done, Jen. You actually made sense of that incredibly dangerous and stupid task of which I set for you. And that is why Barking Mad exists, folks. So let's look forward to next week then. We're going to be talking predictions, everyone. Not just ourselves. We did that last week, but actually just the NFL season. We're going to get a little weird with it, as we like to do. It's going to be a much more fun podcast next week. Do follow us at Believeland Brits and also at our network heads at Full 10 Yards. We also have taken part in the season guide, which they're currently running. The printed orders are now closed. So it's digital orders only now. It's £4.50 with the code BELIEVE10. You can get those at full10yards.co.uk/guides. You'll see the digital one up there. Just click that button and all the profits made towards that will go towards supporting little upstarts like ourselves just to keep the lights on, because StreamYard isn't cheap, but also towards some of the fantastic work of which we've been doing to promote American football in the UK, such as, for example, the BAFA wheelchair football. That was really good to help support, and also just to hear the stories of as well. But you can see more of that at Full 10 Yards. We're here to talk about the Browns. We will talk about the Browns next week and keep it nice, light, and Watson-free. That's it from me, Jen, Shaun, Owain. Thank you very much. This has been the Believeland Brit podcast.